Hey, hey.
There we go. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Cool, cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Great. Well, thanks for being here, and thank you to everyone else who's on here. Um, Joe, I love your background. Do you actually play the ukulele? Do you actually play the ukulele,
I
don't you?
okay, so the story behind that, there was this one song I really like. Hey, what's up, Eric? So there's this one song I heard called Cha Cha Cha, and I was like, I loved it so much, I was like, I want to learn it. It was on ukulele, so I bought the ukulele and I only learned that one song. So I
Wait,
only
for
know
real?
one song.
Wait,
Yes.
that's awesome. But he keeps it as decoration. I would just like to say the
Yeah.
commitment is real. You can't let it just
I
collect dust.
there you go. I had it, it was like sitting on my side and I was like, you know what? I need a nice like stand for it. So I just built the stand and I was like, I'll just put it up there.
Yeah. We're really excited for you guys to be here as well. I can never tell with
Hey, just
there we go. Okay, I was like, I can never tell with Instagram like handle names what their names are, and I'm like too afraid that I'm gonna like try and it's gonna be so incorrect. Hi, Dasom. It's really nice to have you here as well. I think we might as well just get into it. This is the third episode of Just a Thought, and I'm personally really excited, Joe, that you're a guest. I'm so glad that you wanted to be a guest on this anyways. Just for everyone else who's new here, Just a Thought is a Insta Live series that my friend Kayla and I actually decided to start together. Kayla actually manages it. Kayla Johnson. You should check her out on Instagram. She has a blog Instagram called Happy Horizons. I'll type it in the chat. I love her work and I totally think you should check it out. But that being said, Kayla and I really wanted to create a space where people can hold conversations and learn more about other topics or deep dive into different things. And so that was definitely my inspiration for starting I Kid You Not in the first place. Then obviously along the way we made a community, and I'm really glad that Kayla wanted to help me make this come to life so I can have one-on-one conversations with different people and deep dive into what they're interested in. Um,
Yeah. Hey,
so
Hollis, I saw you just hop in.
yeah, so yeah,
And
feel free to chat at Joe if you guys have any questions throughout the conversation. It'd be awesome. So Joe, I'm just gonna like pass it off to you. This is really random. Joe and I actually were LinkedIn connections like a year ago. And I started following him because he's a bit older than me, but he's in the same kind of major sort of like interest as I am in school. And so all the stuff he used to post on LinkedIn, I thought were so cool. Like all the projects he used to post about, I thought were so cool. So I reached out to him and I was like, how do you even do this? Like, I just thought it was so cool. So now a year later, and Joe and I are actually friends, which I hope we're friends, but I'm so
yeah,
excited about it. So Joe, if you want to introduce yourself.
yeah. So my name is Joey. Yeah, all my friends know me as Joey. Well, it's this weird thing where so my family calls me Joey, and for a while I in high school people know me as Joseph. So like I have this weird thing where some high school friends know me as Joseph, some other people know me as Joey. So I have to kind of balance that, but now it's Joey. So yeah, I'm doing a PhD in physics at UT Austin here. Love the city. It's gorgeous. Hey Jocelyn, and yeah, I don't know. I just like being a student. I like learning. That's why I did my PhD. I figured I liked undergrad so much. I like doing the kind of research. I like the freedom of it and kind of being able to choose a project and just like dig my fangs into learning about new things and creating things. And um, yeah, I mean, I like to do a lot of side projects on the side. And the post that I think you saw was it was I made a dual screen monitor out
Yes.
of an
Yeah.
old laptop screen. So I was because this was like when pandemic was starting, and I
Yeah.
was I was learning to make apps, and I had to like split screen a video tutorial, but also the program running, and I was like, it's too tiny, and my brother's like, just buy a second app. And then I was like, no, I'm not gonna. They were really expensive, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just like. I looked up YouTube videos, and then I just ended up taking my laptop screen apart and making that. So yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. That was like my reaction to when I saw his post. I like immediately commented under it. I was like, this is so cool. Um, I feel like I tell people this a lot, Joe, whenever I meet them and they know you and they're like, oh, who's Joe and stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? Joe is like, if I was older and pursuing a PhD, like that's what I would hope to be. Like you're so cool. And I love that you say that you're really interested in learning. Like not a lot of people say that. I feel like, hi Shika, I'm glad you could join us. I said, hi Annie. I know Annie joined us, and Kayla also joined us, so I'm glad Kayla's here as well. But I, hi Alvin. People keep joining us, but yeah, I'm so glad that you say that
Yeah.
you're into learning because I feel like, school tends to take the joy of learning out of certain things. I do feel like school definitely does enhance it in some aspects, but sometimes you don't get to do as many projects as you want to do. And so I'm really glad that you take, you're learning outside of classroom as well. I think it's really cool that you do that. And that's definitely something I try to do. So I really love that you do that. But we're going to get into that a little later. We're going to be talking about passion projects a little bit later. But one thing I did want to ask you about, I want to go a little bit into your background. You're getting a PhD in physics, right, Joe?
Mhm.
Okay, so one thing that I did want to ask you about, and this is something that I personally struggle with as well, and anyone who's watching us live, feel free to ask any questions that are related to this, not related to this that you have for Joe, or feel free to answer the questions I'm asking Joe for yourself. We'd love to hear what you have to say. But I wanted to ask you, you're clearly doing a major that's definitely more technical, quote unquote technical, um, more related in like STEM and things like that. But a lot of the things that you like to spend outside of your time outside of school doing are, I would say, quote unquote creative, right? So with writing and things like that. I know you were talking about in the like KD9 community that you were getting into pixel art. I thought that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Um, so something that I wanted to ask you is like, how do you balance, majoring in something that's very technical, but then, outside of school, pursuing things that allow you to express your creativity more? What does that look like
Yeah.
for you, balancing the two?
So I think this was a while back. I've structured it in a way that I could understand a little better. But it's for me, it's a concept of like consumers and creators. So a consumer is someone who consumes content, information. Um, I have three Joey clones, so one of them's writing the book right now.
I know, I was
But
just gonna say that was a great question. Sometimes I wonder that too.
one of them's over there writing the book, so he'll get his treats later. But
He'll
no,
get
so
paid
it's kind
later.
of the yeah. We pay him in trident layers, so that's how our pyramid scheme works,
Gotcha.
right? But it's the concept of, for me, like creators and consumers. So
Hmm.
consumers consume information. I mean, you watch a video, you consume information. You read a book, you consume information. But um, I mean, for me, it's finding a good balance between those. So there's really intense periods where I have consumption, where I like learn a new skill, and I'm just consuming and consuming and consuming. And I guess creating, but kind of following tutorials. So that for me is a really big period of consumption. And then later I switch it to creator. So as a kid, I like to build Legos and do paper mache and things like that. Um, so that for me was the creator aspect, and that's when me personally, I find most joy in that, creating something that I can actually tangibly touch and rotate and see. And it's just like the joy of creating something for me is what drives me to do these things. And like that's probably as far as I got. Why I'm like this, I have no idea. But I just
Mm,
I just like to do things. I like uh, working with my hands, creating, visualizing things, and yeah.
yeah, I like that, and I think it's interesting because I never really thought about the like consume culture that we have with social media until maybe like about a year ago. when I started to become really, really active on LinkedIn because I realized like just going on LinkedIn for like updating your resume, although that's one way to use the platform, is not a it's not using the platform for its full like potential, right? And so, and I feel like in terms of social media as well, I guess you do get to choose whether you want to be a consumer, whether you want to be a creator. And I think it's really interesting to note that just because you decide that you want to be a creator, it doesn't mean you have to be like an influencer, like on Instagram. Like you don't have
Yeah,
to have
no.
that life. Like
Mhm.
your goal for creating doesn't need to be that you want to monetize it right in the future. It could just be like, oh, that's my outlet to create or to express
Yeah.
my creativity, which I think is really cool. And I definitely that's where I want to get into, you know, with writing for you. I know you were writing a poetry book earlier, right? So
Yeah.
I guess one thing that I want to ask you about writing is like, for you, when did writing become a medium for which you could like express your creativity? Were you always like, did you always like to write, or was that something that you kind of picked up later?
It was okay. It was during high school, probably maybe sophomore, junior year.
Hmm.
We started studying poetry, and just it's strange because there's such a technical aspect to poetry. There's how the poet sets up the rhyme scheme, the meter, the kind of the cadence of the poem, how it goes, the stanzas, the structure of it, the structure of the poem. So there's like I'm not gonna say that everything is like clues towards a meaning, but the poet can use those tools to create something and like express feeling in a certain way. So you can speed up a poem and cause tension. You can slow down a poem and cause the reader to reflect. So there's different tools that the writer can use to, I'm not going to say, I guess, influence you to think or ponder about certain things more deeply than you would normally do. You could say the man ran, or you could say the man was chasing after, I don't know, his dog. And
Yeah.
one of them is a lot more tangible. You can imagine it. It has a lot more emotion to it. And so, um, it kind of started, yeah, in high school. Um, for me, what kind of started it was that I wanted to capture moments that I couldn't really put a finger on. So like you can take a picture of something, you can record something in writing, you can take a video, but that's not going to capture kind of the emotion behind it and like what you're internally thinking because it's 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 kind of strange. Whenever you see a certain event, 20 people can see an event, but they all have different kind of ways of seeing it and interpreting it. And so it's like through poetry, I was able to say, this is what my internal thoughts were about this certain event or this certain feeling, and then here's it all laid down as a recording, something to keep and hopefully last to the end of time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it really started with poetry. I started to write a lot of poetry. Um, hey, what's up, Marcus? Um, Started to write a lot of poetry. I wrote a lot of nature poems. It was inspired by this one poem I wrote called "The Rage of Nature" that looks at kind of nature and humans and kind of the battle and how I guess not battle, but the interplay between humans and nature and how they interact in different aspects, how nature reflects human emotion and feelings and things like that. Um, so I have I don't know how many, 50, 60 poems for that. I still plan to write that book and publish
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but um, the reason I've been postponing that is because publishing and marketing and getting a book done is really hard.
It
And
is,
so
yeah.
I needed I needed training, and so there was a nice program where they train you to market and write a book, and so I jumped off and to do that program to learn how to market and write a book, and then that's what started my sci-fi book called Xenogene that I'm currently writing right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So once I get experience for that, I can do the poetry book and give it a better shot.
Yeah. I have so many questions now. Yeah, I think well, first of all, I think my question is wow. So many questions. Guys, in the chat, feel free if you have questions that you want to ask Joe as well on any of these topics, please comment it. We'll get to it. In fact, you know what? Now might be a good time for me to share one of the questions that someone else asked today. I'm posting it up here while I kind of digest what you said because I think it's really interesting what you said about writing and being able to capture moments in time. I recently picked up film photography for a very similar reason. I think like taking pictures with your phone and things like that, although it's like very clear and things like that. How often do you actually like take a picture of a flower that you see on a walk and you're like, wow, that's so pretty. Let me take a picture. How often do you go back and look at that picture? For me, at least, I realize like I rarely do that, right? And I really enjoyed the feeling of being in that moment when I was taking a picture of that flower, but I never go back into my camera roll to look at it. And so I got a disposable camera and I started taking pictures because I had to kind of go with my gut feeling like, oh, I feel really good in this moment. I want to capture it in some way. Um, so I think it's really interesting to hear that for you and like in order to capture those feelings, like poetry is that for you, right? And I think that's really cool. Let's go to the question really quickly because I know we talked a little bit about the fact that you like learning and you like to apply your knowledge in different ways, whether that's actually in the classroom or outside of the classroom with, you know, that project that I mean, the reason I know you now is because of that post that you made with that project. So yeah, I think this is a great question, and it's definitely a question that I've had to answer a lot, or for myself, or try to figure out for myself. But do you have a specific system for learning and applying what you learn? So I know you mentioned like, sometimes I'll consume a lot of content by trying to learn a new skill, trying to take classes in your own time. You know, when you were learning how to build apps or code apps, did you have a system for learning all that stuff and then for later applying it for a like a passion project or something like that? How does that process or system look like for you?
Yeah, so I guess I don't have like a step one, step two, step three, but it's more of, I guess, a conceptual structure that I have. So
Hmm.
right off the bat, I want to do something. So I don't know, I want to build an app. So then I have to determine what's the best way to build that app, kind of understand the lay of the land. So just go wide in terms of your research, find out what the best app making programs are, find YouTube tutorials comparing different app making programs, um, see forums, ask questions, like, and then once you know kind of I don't think it's always hard to know which is the best. The best is often different for different people. So depending on what you need, once you have a good kind of lay of the land, pick something, and then I say just consume as much content about that as you can. And then I have this other rule that I have to create five things until I can consider, or I have to follow five kind of tutorials or five example projects before I can consider doing something by myself. So I have to
Hmm.
create five apps based on YouTube tutorials, and then I allow myself to create my own app that I want to do based on whatever I'm feeling. Um, so then that gives me a good, like, better understanding of how long the process is going to take of creating an app or any other thing. Um, and then I track my progress. It's very hard to find a good way to track progress, at least for me in my mind. So for example, what I did for the book is that I track how many words I write a day.
Hmm.
And so I have a goal of I set up a goal of 50,000 words for the book, and I've reached like 32,000 right now, but I have a little Excel spreadsheet. I love Excel oh, it's so great. But I track how many words I do per day, what days I write, and then so I get a nice little pretty plot of it's not an as it's not always as nice as I'd hope it would be, but it shows progress, and it gives me something to look back on and say like, wow, I really did like 32,000. Like I remember when I wrote my first 4,000 words, I was like, wow, this is hard. But
Wow.
30, yeah, it's good to have something to look back on and reflect on, to be proud of yourself and write down like I I wrote down cool things I've done. I have it on my whiteboard over there. And so like every now and then I'll look at it and say like, dang, I really like did those things. And
Wait, I
I don't know,
really
it's
like
just
that you do that, first of all, because like, not a lot of people not a lot of people celebrate their achievements, right? Um, so sorry, so you have like a board in your room that literally like,
it's a yeah, it's a little section called cool things I've done. And then I
I
have
like
like
that.
eight things up there right now that I'm really proud of.
That's awesome. Anyone who's listening, I highly recommend if you don't do this already, I think that's one thing I'm definitely gonna, after this call, try and put in my room because I think that you need to celebrate, the achievements that you have. What are the things that you're proud of, right? You need to make sure that you're reminding yourself like you've made it very far, right? So sorry, Joe, continue. I think that's awesome that you do that.
Yeah, the reason I do it, I don't want to like sound like an egotistical maniac, like, oh yeah, I love myself. No, but it's the fact that oftentimes when we look back on an experience, if you don't have like a concrete thing about it, like for example, a poem, like if it's not written down, if you don't take a picture of it, the way you remember it when you recall it, you can remember it different ways, different every time you recall it. I mean, it's there's like a neuroscience thing about that where when you
Right.
recall memories, you shade it differently every time you recall it. So to
Yeah.
have something concrete, just it's just nice to have something because our minds are can trick us in many different ways. So
Someone asked,
I think,
Kayla actually asked, what are some of the cool things you've done? And we'll get to the question that was also asked before, right after. But yeah, what are some of the cool things you've done if you don't mind
ooh,
sharing?
yeah. So my most recent one, I got a 30% stake in a patent for some graduate work that I did with a professor.
Wow.
So that was I was like my it was funny because my brother's like, oh, like they're not my brothers aren't in STEM, so they're not in engineering or math or stuff like that. I mean, one of them is in data science now, but before they weren't. So when I went into engineering, they're like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna build stuff." And then when my oldest brother's like, "Yeah, how many patents are you gonna get?" And I was like, "I'll let you know." But it was just when I told him about it, I was like, "Here's number one, patent number one." Um, Another one too was this semester I took 21 credit hours. They were all like STEM, math,
Wow.
programming kind of hard classes. So it was very rigorous. And I worked tutoring
Wow.
like 10 hours a week and I made all A's that semester. I was like,
No
when I saw
way.
my report, yes, when I saw my
Con
report card, I was like, what?
Congratulations.
Like,
That's
yeah.
like genuinely amazing. I'm like floored. And this is what like during COVID times, right?
No, this was before. This was
This was
before.
before,
But
but still, that's
it was
insane.
it was
Wow.
like two labs. It was one of them was a programming lab. One of them was a like a go in like do physics, set up experiments lab. So I think it was
Yes,
yeah,
big
two
brain
labs
stuff, Kayla. You're
and
right.
then
It is big
oh
brain
my
stuff.
God. Ooh,
Wow.
it was rough, but that
Oh
was
my
yeah.
God.
That showed me kind of my limitations, how far I could push myself. And then it's also good like writing down what you've done because you know how far you can go and like you can keep pushing yourself. If you're not reaching your limit, then ask yourself why. Like, is this a mental block you're putting up or some other thing like that? So
Yeah. Wow. That's like major motivation, I think, for me for an engineering student. I think it's like a lot of these classes are so draining. And like
yeah.
I'm only now working in a place where I'm actually applying the things that I've learned. So I think it's really motivating to hear that. And wow, Joe, that's actually amazing. Thanks for sharing that with us. I'm just gonna go back to the question that was asked before. Was there anyone in your family or your upbringing that inspired you to pursue writing or writing/reading and engineering and physics more?
Um, I think the writing was more my teachers in high school.
Hmm.
So just the like reading Hemingway and kind of hyper analyzing it and knowing that you could hide meaning between words and words. I always like to think of it like the writing is kind of an exterior cloud, but if you dig deep enough, you find a little gem that's
Yeah.
what's kind of the nugget of wisdom. And it was the English teachers I had were just so passionate about it, and it just made it fun and exciting to actually read and kind of analyze poems and works of writing and things like that. So that was
Yeah.
that was the inspiration behind my writing. Engineering, physics, probably my dad. My
Yeah.
dad liked to build a lot of things, so uh, he'd build like a back patio cover. He'd build that all out of like he'd buy the cement, he'd buy the wood, he'd cut everything, lay down the rebar and things like that. So he was a very hands-on person, and then sometimes I'd help him out, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun." So I was a little kid like helping him out, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool." So that yeah, he's probably my inspiration for kind of the engineering route
Yeah.
of things.
No, for sure. Um, that's great. I think, wow, you're Joe, you're so accomplished. Like I think I hope I'm glad that you have a list in your room that reminds you that you are accomplished. And I hope you know that. I think you're very I think you're a very great person to look up to, especially like my age for sure, because you're not very far, but you're so close. Like and it's definitely motivating for me, and I know that I can like continue to work hard and stuff like that. Hollis, thank you for joining us. We're gonna be posting the full conversation later if you want to view it later. But thank you for being with us. She mentioned or he
All right.
mentioned.
Well,
Sorry, I cannot. They
hey,
mentioned.
thanks for coming, Hollis.
Yeah, they mentioned that they like the thought of being intentional with your time and being a consumer versus a creator. I think that that's also really important. Some people say you should be one or the other. I actually do agree with you. I think you should be intentional with how you balance both out. But I'm gonna go straight into the writing a book stuff. I know Kayla had a question. Kayla, I'm sure you're probably itching to know the answer. Um, Kayla
Wait,
commented in,
real
yeah,
quick.
yeah, yeah.
Um, when you said I'm a inspiration to look up to. Thank you for that. But I'd also like to emphasize that don't um my accomplishments are things that should inspire you. It shouldn't
Hmm.
be things that you try to replicate, or
Right,
don't say I want to be like there's it's very dangerous when you say you want to be like this person, because then
right,
you cease to be yourself. You're not going to fit another person exactly. So
100%.
you have to silence parts of yourself that make you want to be like the other person. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. But one thing that really helped me at least stay humble and to keep going on is that to recognize that there's always somebody smarter at you at something. And so
Hmm.
you can complain about it, you can whine about it, or you can learn from them. You can ask them questions, you can be mentored by them. So that's really helped me to like understand that what I know now is a drop compared to what the entire world knows, what some other people know. So there's
Yeah,
always somebody better at you than at something.
yeah. That's why I think that good reminder, definitely a good reminder, Joe. That's why I think it's really important as well to have people who motivate you or who inspire you, I think, for sure. I definitely feel like I get inspired a lot by work ethic, or the way people pursue their own goals, and you're definitely one of those people. So thanks, Joe. I think that
Thank you. Thank
that's an awesome reminder as well. You're right. You're never going to be able to fit someone else's mold. So be careful about how you put it. I just want to get into Kayla's before we run out of time. I really want to get into Kayla's question that she commented under the post. She asked, she said that she's interested in writing a book someday as well. And I know that you've taken some courses as well to learn how to market and publish your own book, but I wonder if you can give us a little crash course from Joseph Schmidt. You know, how do we,
you.
what is the process of writing a book? Not only writing a book, let's go from ideation to writing to publishing and marketing. Give us like a quick crash course. What does that look like, Joe? And
All right. So
you can use the book that you're currently publishing as an example. We definitely want
mhm,
to plug that. Everyone, keep your eyes out for Joe's book. When is it releasing, by the way?
it's gonna be published in December. So
Awesome,
a pre-sale there's a pre-sale campaign coming in July.
awesome.
I have to release stuff about that. But in July, um, that's when it's gonna you're gonna start seeing more.
Awesome.
What's that? Sorry about that. Yeah, okay, so quick
I'm
crash
excited.
course. So from idea, what I usually start with, so I have like a backlog of notes that it's kind of like I just throw ideas at the wall, and then if they stick, then I'll keep writing about them. So I use Evernote to keep a lot of notes, different ideas that I have. So I'll start with one idea, write it down, be like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea, write it down, and then I'll just kind of leave it. And then if I come back to that idea continually and I keep adding ideas and things like that, that's when I know that I've got something that's pretty good. And so it started for the book I'm writing right now, Xenogene. It started with kind of I saw a lot of articles about genetic engineering and genetically engineering humans, and then kind of the aspect what the moral dilemmas, the ethical implications, the good that you can do with it when things go wrong. So for a book, you need a good source of tension. Something can go wrong. There has to be some kind of stakes. The character has to kind of grow throughout it. So you need. Thank you, Marcus. Dude, I'm so hyped for it. I actually submitted the first draft yesterday. So
Yes.
an editor's gonna read through it and type notes, and then I'm gonna start fixing it up. So we're chugging along. But um,
That is so
a
exciting.
good source of yeah, a good source of tension. Something that allows creators to or the characters to grow, kind of in a. I like to use realistic worlds. Kind of it's called hard sci-fi. So I like my rigid boundaries, and then finding ways to that the creator or the characters can break it in a creative way. And then so once I have kind of a good idea that I'm proud with, then I start drafting out a timeline of. For me, I like to write sequentially, knowing how where the story is going to go. It allows me to put clues and kind of structure it better. I'm not a free writer. I'm too scared of where the story will go, if it'll go off rails or something. So
Yeah.
I have to.
I
When
always
I wrote it,
wondered how free
I wrote
writers do
the.
that.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
they just they have such they know the characters so well that they know how they're going to behave, and they can just like it's like following them with a camera. But it's
Yeah.
I don't know that for me that's very that's just a different way of doing it. So then I what I did is I wrote the first scene that I wanted in the book. I imagine it like a trailer, uh, like a movie.
Yeah.
I had the first idea in my head, and then I had the last scene, kind of one of the last scenes in my head. Um, and then I kind of said, okay, point A, point B, how do I get there? And then kind of filling in events in the middle, things that happen, good things, bad things, that allow the characters to grow. You always want your character to change in some way, grow in some manner. So setting up events in ways like that, that the challenges, obstacles. So yeah, then I once I drafted all that, um, I that's when I started to write. So I wrote sequentially, started with the first scene, wrote it out, and then kept going on from then on out. And yeah, don't be hypercritical of what you write. It's going to be refined. Like first draft isn't always going to be perfect. Like I look back at my first draft now and I'm like, wow, this is cringy. It's so bad. But then I look at my later scenes and I'm like, this is a lot better. Like I'm pretty proud of how much how I've gotten better at knowing my writing voice, I guess.
Yeah. Do you know how much you like worked it? So like how many drafts you probably had before you decided like, okay, now I kind of want to move towards the stage of publishing?
Um, how many drafts there's gonna be?
How many drafts do you think there's gonna be before like it's ready to publish? Or like before you get your final
Probably
draft?
I'm thinking probably three drafts. So the first draft is kind of story and add more content here and refine this. And second draft is kind of a bit more polished. And I think third draft is when um, kind of the grammar. It's third draft is kind of the little nitpicky grammar and word choice things like that. So I think probably like three drafts, hopefully. Hopefully.
Wow. That's so cool. And then like how did you so are you working with the publishing company or like an I don't really know the terms, an edit like with an editor or something like that?
Yeah. So the way I understand it, it's a very weird structure to me too. But the publishing company that I'm working with is New Degree Press.
Okay.
So what's nice is they have a program that allows the writer to write the book, and the writer keeps all of the rights to the book. So normally in traditional publishing, the publishing company keeps 40% or I don't know whatever percentage, and then the writer keeps 30%. So then the sales, whenever someone buys the book, 40% goes to the publisher, and then 60% goes to the writer and maybe other people involved. But so I have for the program I'm doing, I have 100% rights to that. So that's really nice because I don't have to
That's
worry
cool.
about kind of it's my content. I can choose who to share it with and who can use it and things like that. Um, and so then in that program, there's like first step is a developmental editor. So they're holding your hand along the way. As you're writing, they're like, hey, what if you do this for an idea, or why did you write this? Like, can you flesh that out a little more? So they help you kind of along the way to grow in writing. And then I think acquiring editor is the one that I just passed it off to yesterday, and they're gonna
Gotcha.
read the whole manuscript and then say fill in more here, kind of uh, fix this part here. So they're a lot more holistic. And then I
Gotcha.
think there's later editors that do kind of a similar thing.
That's really cool. Wow. I like you just don't know. I mean, I think when you read books, you just never know like what was the history of that book? Like what did it go through to get to where it is right now while you're reading it, right? I think that's so interesting. Kayla, feel free to comment if you have any additional questions for Joe about the writing and publishing process. We'll ask him. We're kind of coming up in like the last 10 minutes here. So yeah, anyone who's listening, please feel free to comment. I was just gonna kind of move on to more generally talking about passion projects, Joe. So yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything related to what we've been talking about, or it could be not related to what we've been talking about, please feel free to ask. And we'll definitely stop for those questions. Uh, one question that I had for you is like for projects in general, right? Like you definitely have undertaken. I know I really don't want to let it end. It's gonna end in 10 minutes. The thing is gonna shut us off in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, Joe, I think the people want another episode with you, so maybe
Yeah.
we definitely gotta make you come back. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, feel free to comment if you want Joe to come back for another episode. It'll help me convince him that he should come back.
Put hashtag bring Joe back.
Hashtag bring Joe back. Let's start that hashtag. Um, so you definitely have undertaken, I feel like a lot of passion projects, probably, right? Like, um, do you always, I'm curious, do you always finish projects that you start? Sorry, did you, I'm not, I think it cut you off like right then.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Oh, what the heck?
Hashtag bring
I
Joe
don't know.
back. Yes. We're gonna add that to the caption now when we post this.
Okay. No, I haven't finished a lot of my projects.
Okay.
I have one project. I think I have a project right there that's it's a Raspberry Pi. So I've been wanting to experiment with Raspberry Pi and make like a daily planner, sync it up with my Google Calendar, and then kind of display my daily stuff. And I have a AI assistant that I want to work on with the Raspberry Pi. So that's
Yeah.
sitting. Um, I mean, I don't finish my projects, and I'm realizing that I have to be like dedicated to specific projects that
Right. Right.
I want to do. And so like right there I have three things that I'm focusing on. So right now it's my fusion research, my book, and then that's that for right now because those two keep my hands full. And so before I used to do a lot of different projects and things like that and never really accomplished them all the way through. But yeah, I'd say maintain your focus on a select few number of things. If something, this is the thing, if you have a good idea for some other project, write it down. Open up an Evernote note, write it down, write as much as you can think about it. And then in that way, also you're pre-planning for when you want to do the project. So you can like if you write it down, you don't waste time actually doing the project, and then you can assess whether it's a project that you want to do and how long it's going to take and things like that. So
Hmm.
if you have multiple projects going on, write down the ones you're not going to do immediately, and then have kind of a plan there of action.
I like that. It helps you assess. So I guess that's my kind of follow-up question to that. How do you decide what projects to pursue, right? Like what, especially if you keep, right, like writing down the ideas that come to you, which ones do you decide that you move forward with? Which ones do you decide maybe you're already working on the project and you kind of decided like, actually, I think I'm gonna have to stop here. Like, I don't think I want to take this much further. How do you make that decision for which ones to pursue and then which ones like when you've already started to like let go?
I don't know that I have a good answer for this. I think it's it's very tricky to stop midway because, like I said before, our minds often end up tricking us. Like writing a book is painful, and
Mhm.
like when I started that, when I was, I don't know, a couple thousand words in, I dreaded writing. I'd see the blank page. I was like, ah, man, I have to write 1,000 words. I'd have to force myself to do that. That
Yeah.
was like, if you I'm not going to say if you have to force yourself to do something, don't do it. That's probably not a right thing. Sometimes you're going to have to force yourself to do things you don't like. You're going to force yourself to work out to stay healthy, but it's recognizing kind of the end goal. Is the end goal where you originally thought it was, and is it going to take you someplace better? So, for example, for this book, it's for me, it's the reason I'm writing the book is because I think genetic engineering is such a interesting topic, but it's also very relevant now with kind of the genetic cures it can address, kind of maximizing crop yield, helping out animals uh, resist diseases and things like that. So, but the offshoot effects, if genetic engineering goes wrong, there's very bad things that can happen, and I don't think people know that much. And so, for me, the book is a way to get people interested in that conversation.
Hmm.
So it's not me writing a book because I want to write a book. It's me writing a book because I think this is a very important issue to talk about that people need to know about in layman terms. Not the high technical talk, but kind of how is it going to affect you now? How is it going to affect you in the future?
Yeah. Wow. I think you said something really cool there is like, is the end goal something that you want, one, and then two, will it actually lead to something better for you like in the future? I think I think that was something that, hey Hamza, you came in at the end. You would have liked this too. Hamza's actually one of the people who like first introduced the idea of like consuming versus creating, and so Hamza, Joe had a really
Yeah.
good spiel about it, so you're probably gonna have to listen to this once we post the full clip. But I'm glad you can make it to the end. I definitely struggled with. I tend to be someone who also likes to do a lot of projects in my spare time, and I definitely struggled with like figuring out when a project should be over for me and when I'm done with it, or whether I should even pursue a certain project. So I think it's really interesting to always hear like how people who also like to do projects in their spare time, how they make that distinction for themselves. It's always something that I like to learn. All right, I think we're gonna head into our last question. Um, One thing I have for you that I kind of wanted to ask is like, you talked about consuming versus creating. Um, I find that the content that you consume, I think it's important to consume content. I find that the content you consume is really, really important because it can affect your mental health, it can affect your goals, it can affect how you live your life, things like that, right? So I try to be really careful about curating my social media feeds, curating entertainment that I consume, um, whether it's books, podcasts, movies, TV shows, things like that. So I'm curious, Joe, what kind of content do you like to consume? I'd love to hear like since you are writing a book, or you're publishing a book now, I'd love to hear what are your top three favorite books of all time? They can be any genre. Curious, what are your top three favorite books of all time?
All right. I'm gonna have to go with one book. This I read this book in high school. This made me want to pursue a PhD in physics. So it's driven a lot of what I've where I am now. It's called Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
Yes.
Love that book. It just made me think like what a galactic kind of civilization would look like, and like I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to do that. So then I wanted to do research that got us to that point.
Yeah.
So that's like number one, way at the top, number
I
one.
love that.
The second one, I'll go with the three body problem. It's another sci-fi book. Um, that one was very like hard science. Like it talked about uh, like subatomic particles and things like that. It talked about aliens, like how we would interact with aliens, like what kind of policies we would do. There'd be certain people for the aliens, against the aliens, things like that, how that would affect society and technology and things like that. So it was a very realistic look at kind of what would happen. And so I really like those kind of realistic, like, kind of stories. So that's
Yeah.
like, that.
These are good recs.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know what my third one would be. I mean, I'm always a sucker for Isaac Asimov, so something Isaac Asimov related, sci-fi again.
There we go.
Um,
No, sci-fi is a great. I'm glad that actually. I'm glad that all your recs are sci-fi because
yeah.
whenever I ask a lot of people don't. They're all over the map. Usually, our last episode we got some business related books. The first episode we got like some fiction and some biographies. So I like getting the diversity in these book recs.
Yeah, I think like in terms of personal development, I'll go with David Goggins. What was it called? You Can't Hurt Me, I think it was.
Oh yes, the Navy
That
SEAL,
one.
right? Was he a Navy
Yes.
SEAL?
Yeah. Yeah, that one was just, it made me realize that a lot of the things that we find painful are, I'm not going to say they're not painful, but there are ways to cope with it. And there's a lot of pain that you encounter, and it's not always the best answer to run away from pain or try to hide it, but you have to understand it and even use it if you can in a way to fuel you on your whatever your endeavors you're doing. So like that,
Yeah.
for me, that really helped with book writing. Like it's painful, but
Yeah.
I have to do it.
Yeah. I I think this is a good stopping point because I'm glad you brought up the writing, the process of writing a book and how it is painful sometimes. Joe and I are actually going to be, Joe's going to be the guest speaker for I Kid You Not's public workshop
Mhm.
next month. And he's going to be leading a workshop on how to pursue legacy projects. Some of you guys might be wondering, what is a legacy project? Same, I had to ask Joe what that meant. But he'll be kind of
I just
walking us
coined the
through.
term.
Sorry, what did you say?
I just coined the term, so I just made it off the top of
There we
my
go.
head.
Hey, it's copyrighted at this point, guys. But if you're curious on what a legacy project is, or you're curious how to pursue and stick with long-term projects, definitely recommend. It's going to be a free workshop, so feel free to follow I Kid You Not for more updates. Follow Joe and his writing account, but also his personal account. He is joined from his personal account, so definitely give him a follow. And I really appreciate everyone who's stuck with us for the full 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Has been amazing, Joe. I think we're gonna have to make that hashtag a real thing, and
Yeah,
we're definitely gonna have to
bring
bring you
Joe back.
back for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you everyone for coming, and thanks for the questions. Like it's it's very I don't get to, I guess, talk about myself a lot. I don't really like talking about myself a lot. I don't like prideful. I don't like people who have pride in themselves, overly prideful. So it's hard for me to talk about myself, but thank you for making it, I guess, acceptable and fun to do this. So yeah,
100%.
thank
We're just learning from you, Joe. I'm very glad that we got to have this conversation with you. And thank you to everyone who joined us. So like if any of you guys have more questions, hi Mandar. That's my cousin. Mandar, you're gonna have to watch the rest of the conversation. I'm gonna actually post it right
you.
away. So anyone who liked something that Joe said, you want to come back to see what his recs were, feel free to check out what he said. You'll be able to watch it again. And Joe, you got a fan club here. We
Yes.
hashtag bring Joe back. It's gonna happen now. All right. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah. All right. Stay safe, everyone.